We don't know whether the Coast Miwok natives who first lived in the Cotati Valley were racing enthusiasts, but we do know that the Thomas Stokes Page family members were, during the years that they owned the Cotati Rancho. Wilfred Page had a racetrack built on the northwest side of what's now the city of Cotati. Traces of the oval can still be seen along Gravenstein Highway at Derby Lane. Guess how that street got its name? The 1898 Reynolds and Proctor Sonoma County Atlas shows Wilfred Page's property and racetrack quite clearly, and this photo of Wilfred Page's favorite racehorse, Eclectic, ran in the newspapers in about 1911 when this horse's brother Arion was setting world speed records. We don't know whether Wilfred Page ever won with Eclectic, but we do know that only 10 years later in 1920, racing fever hit Cotati at full strength. This time, it was auto racing. A builder and promoter named Jack Prince appeared and convinced investors all over Northern California that they needed a world-class auto racetrack. Mr. Prince had built racetracks in Indianapolis, Los Angeles, Tacoma, and Fresno that were taking in over $100,000 per race. He promised that a track in Sonoma County could be even more profitable, and he set out to raise the $250,000 needed for the construction by selling $100 life memberships. Racing fans flocked to get in on the deal. The Press-Democrat reported that Prince collected $5,000 in the first 2 days. It was to be a wooden track, bowl-shaped, and 1.25 miles long, rising 26 feet in the air on the straightaways and 60 feet on curved ends, with 38-degree bank turns. As chambers of commerce in all of the neighboring cities got excited about the grand plan, the North Bay Counties Fair Association suggested that the Speedway could also be a county fairground with exhibit buildings and livestock show rings. An airfield could be built on the center of the ring, so aviators could land from any direction. Investors from all over Northern California scrambled to buy life memberships in such a grand endeavor. Cotati had the most available flat land. The railroad came right to the area, and there were pretty good roads from the ferry landing in Marin County up to Cotati. The decision was made, and the Sonoma County Fairs Association bought 135 acres of land from the Page family's Cotati Company. It was on East Cotati Avenue alongside the railroad tracks. Groundbreaking day, Sunday, April 24th, 1921, produced quite a show. Cotati people had planted palms and shade trees at the entrance. Mayor James Rolfe of San Francisco drove the first stake. Bands played, a rodeo was held, pretty girls rode in decorated cars. Dancers performed, and airplanes from Mather Field flew over, dropping prizes. A local man, Al Herman, known for his crowing rooster impersonations, tossed wildly colored chickens into the crowd. Construction started right away on the Speedway. Walter Proctor, the building contractor, hired 150 carpenters, and on the first day of work, they set 796 feet of supports. The construction took over 3,000 feet of lumber, over 670 tons of 20-penny spikes, and over 100 kegs of 10 and 12-penny nails. The surface of the huge bowl-shaped track was made of 2x3s laid on edge. The Press-Democrat called it the greatest enterprise ever launched in Northern California. Those carpenters must have worked like demons. The grand opening was held on August 14th, barely 4 months after the groundbreaking. The Cotati Speedway was on a race circuit that included Indianapolis and other top tracks, so leading drivers including Tommy Milton, who had won the first classic at Indianapolis, Eddie Hearn, Roscoe Sarles, Eddie Miller, and Joe Thomas signed on to race. Eddie Rickenbacker was honorary referee. Petaluma sisters Rose and Elsa Karstens promoted the egg basket of the world by dancing while spreading feathers on the track. 20,000 fans came on the first day, not quite the 50,000 that Jack Prince had predicted, but still enough to completely clog the highways between Sausalito and Cotati. They watched Eddie Hearn set a new world record, driving his diesel Duesenberg an average of 110 miles per hour. He won $5,000 from the American Automobile Association. 2 weeks later, professional motorcycle racers took to the track, and Otto Walker on his Harley-Davidson set a national record for a 25-mile race, finishing in 16 minutes, an average of 106 miles per hour, in spite of a blown-out tire. The last big auto race of 1921 was a 150-mile classic on October 23rd and was won by Roscoe Searles, driving a Duesenberg an average of just under 110 miles per hour. But a rainstorm had hit Cotati the day before, and until that morning the race on the uncovered wooden track was in doubt. The track's second season began with a bang on May 7, 1922, with racers from several countries competing and boasting that they weren't worried that the entries numbered unlucky 13. Italian Pietro Bordino won the 50-mile race, and Jimmy Murphy of Ireland set a new world record in the 100-mile event. But the crowd was only about 15,000, in spite of an advance visit by racing celebrity Barney Oldfield and a brass band performance and a bonus baseball game before the races. The weather was cool and damp. A car caught fire, threatening the wooden track, and some patrons complained that they couldn't see from their seats in the grandstand. Newspaper stories of the time show a desperate effort to keep the raceway going. To illustrate its versatility, it was given free of charge for an elaborate pageant in June 1922, with hundreds of students from 49 schools dancing around maypoles and competing in a track meet. Businessmen were quoted in the newspapers on the wonderful publicity Sonoma County was getting from the Speedway. But the crowds were disappointing. With no Golden Gate Bridge and many dirt roads, it was just too hard for fans to get to Cotati. 2 more races were held that year, but by January 1923, Jack Prince was making plans to dismantle the Speedway. Some of the lumber went to Santa Rosa to build a grandstand for the Luther Burbank Golden Jubilee. Some went to Healdsburg, and some was bought by a Cotati businessman who opened a lumber and hardware store that is now the Redwood Cafe. Its floorboards, like the old Cotati Speedway, are 2x3s on edge. Racing must have still been in the Cotati people's blood, though, and after World War II, an abandoned Navy airfield proved the perfect place for more modern auto speed trials. The 217-acre site was just north of Hellman Lane, west of the Redwood Highway. After 1945, when the Navy no longer used it for air training, a group of hot rod car racers discovered the abandoned concrete airstrips nestled among hayfields and figured it was the perfect place to test their cars. Motorcycles, go-karts, scooters, all used it with no apparent problems. It wasn't a fancy track. The surface of the old Navy airfield was rough. Hay bales were set up as barricades, and the hay truck flatbed was used as an announcer stand. Portable lights were used for night races, and rudimentary grandstands were built. The first organized drag race was put on by the Redwood Empire Timing Association in 1955. A fatality at the first race kept the association from planning any more organized races for 2 years. The Navy leased the property to the California Research Corporation for road testing purposes, and in 1957 subleased it to the city of Santa Rosa for use as a drag strip, in an effort to cut down street racing in the city. The Chariots Car Club took over, cleaned up the area, and began charging admission fees. The money went to pay for an ambulance. After another car club, the Street Angels, joined the group, they built a timing stand and held organized races every 2 weeks, with some drivers coming up from the Bay Area. In 1960, racing promoter Jim McLennan leased the track and began staging professional races that attracted some of the big names in drag racing. The Cotati track was also used for racing by the American Federation of Motorcyclists. A group of sport riding enthusiasts and some of the top motorcycle racers on the West Coast came to compete. Organized kart clubs used the Cotati track too in the 1950s, and the Northern California Karters Club even held a 100-mile competition here. The first Cotati race by Sports Car Club of America, San Francisco region, was held on May 19, 1957, and was such a success with 13,000 spectators that racing continued regularly for the next 14 years. Other clubs also held racing meets there, including the Northern California Corvette Association, which brought movie starlet Jane Mansfield as race queen and guest announcer, Porsche Club of America, and the Racer Drivers Club, which held drivers' schools at the track. Celebrity actor Steve McQueen experienced the Cotati track when he drove on it to practice for his role in Bullitt with its famous car chase scenes.